It is 6:30, Monday, September 21st, and we are live with Rusty Hooks Live, and this is episode number 28. Is that what I put down here?
I think it is 27, 28, somewhere in that range.
28. I just typed it. But anyways, tonight we've got Mr. William Frazier back in studio with us. Frazier, thanks for coming and
thank you guys for asking me.
Coming back again.
We'll try to keep it under 2 hours.
Yeah, well, we had some great discussions last time. A lot of feedback, a lot of follow-ups with that. Just so you know, a lot of guys told us that that's the best one we've ever done.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Very informative, very enjoyable, so on and so on. So we want to thank you for that to begin with.
Why are you not live?
I am live.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Why are you not live?
I don't know.
Okay. Back, a lot of follow-ups with that.
Turn your volume. There we are.
So you can hear it. But
Back.
yeah, so here we are again. It's fall time of the year, right?
Mm-hmm.
Starting to cool down. As you can see, David's a big sissy. He's got a sweatshirt on.
He ain't the only one.
I just hadn't taken it off today.
Man, when I went fishing Saturday, I had on base layer and Gore-Tex. I ain't into cold.
Well, and what I say, this is big boy weather. So as you can see, I'm still in shorts and a t-shirt because I've got a lot of to heat to cool down.
I understand.
A lot more padding than you guys do.
Oh,
You're pretty padded.
I'm pretty padded, and I'm pretty roasty right now, to be honest with you. But I'm here now.
But one of the big things that we got asked about, which I think, if you could get a bass angler to tell the truth every once in a while, is how tough the fall can be, specifically around water quality, with the turnover. So we got a lot of questions about that. So we're gonna get into that here in a little bit. We do have a little bit of housekeeping to get going though. We have some giveaways to announce. This is our 5th week, so 5 weeks of giveaways for our 1,000 likes. I think we're up to, we're a couple hundred past that now. So thanks for all our viewers. This has grown pretty quickly. Couldn't do it without you. Wouldn't still be here without you. So David, you pick a winner tonight?
Chris Goodwin.
Chris Goodwin. All right. So Chris, get in contact with the store. We got a bag for you. It's got, we'll go through it one more time. It's got an AFCO card or Big Bites card.
Yep.
That's a 50% off card, right?
40 for Big Bites, 50 for AFCO.
Okay. There's some Gamakatsu Aaron Martin treble hooks in there, couple Spro baits, some Sunline, which is fluorocarbon. That's their sniper. I'm missing one.
Big Bites.
Big Bites has got some plastics in there.
Sample packs and some heads and whatnot.
Yeah, so it's a great giveaway. All thanks to Mr. Carl Carson. He usually tunes in.
Yep.
He'll be watching later tonight. So if you bump into him, you can thank him for the merchandise, and he's one of David's suppliers, but he was able to get all that together for us. We do have another giveaway going on. You have until, was it Thursday?
Well,
when's the Oakley? That's how ingrained in my mind is the big bass tournament.
Yeah, I think it starts Friday. So yeah, Thursday night.
So you have till Thursday night to get in there, find our post, put your guess weight on there. That's a mystery giveaway right now. Shane's not here with us tonight. He's actually somewhere in Michigan, I believe, filming Fishing University with Ray Brazier and Charlie Ingram.
Yep.
So Shane has agreed with David that those two guys are going to put a prize pack together for you for the closest weight. We do have a couple tournaments to cover. So we had a cat we had 2 cat tournaments. One on Wiley this past week, which you fished, right?
I attended.
You attended.
Yeah,
all right.
attended.
And we had one on Norman. So were they both opens? I know the one
No.
in Norman was open.
No, the Wiley was not open.
Okay.
They
So-
had it open on Saturday and the actual cat event on Sunday that was not an open.
So there was one on Saturday and Sunday.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Did you fish both of them?
No, Norman.
Oh,
Wiley
Norman.
was just Saturday.
Okay. I'm sorry. I missed that
No,
one.
I work. I've got a project I'm trying to get done before I can focus on fishing again.
So didn't take a whole lot of weight. I don't know what it took Sunday on Norman.
12 something.
12 something.
Was, yeah.
Okay, so I know out here on Wiley, you said it took 13:29. Glenn Sparrow won that. Did he fish by himself?
Chris Baumgartner was with him.
Okay, so Glenn and Chris.
So in other words, Chris Baumgartner won and Glenn was net boy.
I understand.
No, I can't say that. Glenn's a good fisherman too.
Yeah. And then Norman, Jason Wilson from the Gray Outdoors won. He had 12 and change, and Chris Williams was his co-angler. Do you know what it took to win on Sunday up at Norman? I didn't know that was going on.
That was Sunday.
that was Sunday.
Saturday was 12
So
something
about 12 pounds.
with a big fish of 5 something.
I got you.
Shane, our third in charge here, finished second with 12 something as well. I don't remember the exact numbers.
I got you. I didn't know he fished. I thought he was already in Michigan.
No, he did not. His trip got changed. He flew out this morning.
Oh, all right.
He tried to con me into playing golf Monday instead of laying tile. So
There you go. So we got a lot of things coming up. So next weekend, the CBC's on High Rock. That's the last North Carolina qualifier to get you into the championship, which is in October.
did they post the date on that?
Yes, it's the 23rd and 24th on Lake Norman.
Ugh. Okay.
That'll be a 2-day event, $50,000 first place. And then the ABA 2-day will be on Wiley this weekend coming up. Is that a Buster Boyd?
I don't know the answer.
I don't
to
know
that
the
one.
answer to that one either. Then the Big Bass is coming to Norman. That's a 3-day deal, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, right? Can't really blast off from anywhere because you can go wherever you want, take off from wherever you want. You just got to be on your spot, and they give you text lines in. I've never fished one. I've heard they're a lot of fun. So
They're interesting. It's a different mentality.
And then the last thing we need to talk about is the Bass Open starts this week on Lake Hartwell. So with the cool weather, I would think those fish are probably starting to school down there.
I would say that some of the backwater stuff could get you well
Yeah.
in a hurry down there.
That place can be fun. I'm either feast or famine there. I either catch spots you have to glue together to make keepers, or catch one big largemouth and make your.
I don't know. I mean, the problem is we went from summer to straight up fall. Like there's not been a transition. It went from 95 degrees to mid 70s. There's not really been a taper down.
It's supposed to be 40 tomorrow morning.
Looking at the weather, the next 14 days is kind of status quo. I think this weekend it warms up to 78
Don't worry.
when the rain comes through.
This happens every year, and we always forget. We get 2 weeks of cold weather, and everybody thinks fall's here,
Oh,
winter's
yeah.
coming,
95
and
again.
then all of a sudden it's back 95 for the whole month of November.
Listen, all I'm doing is sitting here waiting, hoping that it stays tapering just like it is.
I like it when it gets
'Cause
cold.
you know what happens when it stays on a steady downhill track.
Yeah.
For
I
some
like it when
reason,
it gets
Wiley
cold.
goes from sucking real bad to being real great again. And I don't know where those fish go in between.
Well, hopefully they'll show up again this winter, because it's been pretty abysmal out there this year.
Well,
So, all right, so that was all our housekeeping. Chris, come get your prize pack. You call
I
the
want to
store.
get William Frazier's take on Hartwell. I'd be interested to hear what you think about that.
It's in South Carolina.
Wow.
I try very hard not to talk across borders because I've spent years making friends. I will say that I have worked. I've worked in an Open and a Nation Championship, and I think one other tournament down there. And that's why I kind of snickered when he said what he did about gluing them together to get a limit. I'm going to step on the spot people again, and that I don't want to do that. It just Hartwell is an exceptionally good example of what happens at spot overrun. But there's also a lot of other lakes out there the same way in other states. And I guess that's why our vision of it is we get to see a little bit bigger picture than the local lake guys. It's like Shane, like right now the spots are great. They're awesome.
Right.
But give them 10 years and it's a different animal. That's why we're trying to kind of get ahead of the curve and see if there's anything we can do, but we just don't know.
Sure. Well, while we're talking about that, something that North Carolina had, or South Carolina, that's pretty prevalent in those lakes we're talking about are herring, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we understand that our lakes around here are infertile, right? Well, on the Catawba chain, anyways. I don't want to talk. The Yadkin's different, and then I'm not even sure what Jordan and all those lakes are on, what chain that is.
I can try to explain it, but
Well, I was going to ask. So,
okay.
So threadfins and gizzard shad, to my understanding, when gizzard shad when they're little, they get bigger, their forage changes, but they're filter feeders, right?
They're foragers, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So are herring foragers, or do they eat?
It is my understanding, just from colloquialism and listening to the guys one way or the other, they are a little bit more open about what they eat. They will eat into other things besides just plankton.
Okay.
They're not green grass foragers like cows. And there's always the talk about they'll get into nests and eat eggs or anything else. I really don't know.
Gotcha.
The thing that I can tell you about them is the difference in behavior. And this is what we've seen over and over and over again. One is more of a pelagic fish, and they will draw the bass away from the shore, which they really want to be. And what you typically see in those situations is you'll see good-sized largemouth, but they don't tend to be those Jordan-type largemouth.
Big, short, fat ones.
Look like footballs.
Yeah, they look like a pelagic, long, skinny fish, right?
Yeah.
Because they're always on the move.
Yeah. And the difference between the river systems is that Catawba Yadkin chain are big systems, real big systems. Jordan, for example, one of the things they're fighting there is the nutrients, but it has to do with why and where it's at. There's two branches to Lake Jordan, and it's like two totally different lakes. There's the Haw River branch that starts up Reedsville, North Greensboro area,
Okay.
and it drags a bunch of stuff. It's more like a river system lake. It's not as big as Catawba or Yadkin, but it is still more similar to that. In terms of trying to give you a number, if you took a bucket of water and you traced it all the way from where the Haw enters Jordan Lake to the dam, it's a flow period of about 50 days.
Wow. Okay.
Okay, that would be, and it's not generating power, and that's another major issue with this difference between the other two river chain lakes. But on the New Hope side, if you took that same bucket and traced the water from, say, like New Hope Creek, which is one of the major feeds up there, to the dam, it's 500 days. So you're talking about the difference between one fishing like a river and one fishing like a swamp.
Right.
So there's very real differences in why the lakes are like they are.
I gotcha.
And that's something that we can get into with the thermoclines and the turnover as well, because they're a little bit more stagnant, if you want to use that word.
Right.
Same thing with Harris. Bass are called pigs for a reason. They're not trout.
Right. So, on the herring subject, though, do you think herring, in your opinion now, all right, I won't hold you to anything, do you think herring would survive in our lakes up here better? I mean, would they
With what
support
I've
any of
listened
that
to
at
you
all?
guys
Or?
talk about with the flow and everything, I mean, they probably would, but what they would do in terms of productivity is something totally different.
Gotcha. Pull fish off the bank. Well, he doesn't care about that.
Or even if you pull them off the bank, I don't know
Here's
what they would do.
here's the problem. We already fight that battle a little bit. What was it? 5, 6, 7 years ago?
Yeah, I'll
There was a
argue
big-
here,
there
though,
was-
we don't have herring. We have alewives.
Again, I agree, but there are. I think if you were able to pull every piece of bait out of here, you would find X amount of herring.
Oh, I'm sure.
But again, alewives and herring, even though they look very similar, they act
different.
completely different. And so if you want to go catch schooling fish, which Wiley used to be known for this time of year, you could go run to just about any one of the main lake flats and they would come up schooling. If you sat there for 10, 15 minutes, you'd see them running up and down the flat, and it was all threadfin at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Now that the alewives are there, they don't run up on the flats. They might chase them up for a second, and then they're down as deep as they can get away from the fish.
I've actually got a pretty good visual of that in my PowerPoint that we can look at.
Okay.
And explain exactly what you're saying, because like you said, they do behave differently. And it's one of the things that I learned in doing this. So it's a different critter, but again, I hate to be a purist. That's why I've kind of lined up with the national organization and BAS's Nation Platform for Conservation and the wildlife people to try to keep everything as natural as we can. If we get to the point and say, yeah, bait's an issue, put bait that belongs here, and not, stuff that doesn't.
Again,
So,
revert back to the Norman discussion. Bait's an issue there.
right.
Question is, what bait do you put in? And then, okay, not to beat a dead horse, but the money that's attempting to be raised and things that are attempting to be done, is that the best way to fund, or is that the best project to fund at this point?
Well, the answer that I'm getting, because Corey called me the last part of last week once it had gotten out that it had been approved, and then he and I had a little bit more in-depth conversation. Since I'm having this conversation with conservation directors and wildlife people all over the United States, it's an experiment. So that's a fair assessment,
And that's what it. I mean, that's what it should be deemed as.
sure.
I mean, again,
Well, I think anything that it's not native, right? Like you were saying, Frazier, and you put it in an invasive water,
yeah.
it's going to be an experiment, right?
Sure, but the Floridas are not non-native. Floridas are native.
That's right. I
in
remember
North
you telling us that last time. North Carolina,
but
it's
the
native.
trick behind it is, and I think that's what's driving this, places like Smith Mountain,
Yep.
certainly the Tennessee.
They've done really well in, right?
If you boost that population, then you run the very real possibility, even in weak systems, of getting an uptick in a very positive way.
Sure.
And that's what Corey said. That's what I believe in. I've talked to Gene Gilliland about it. He sat through all 2 hours of the last podcast and sent me back a nice write up because I asked his opinion and what he thought of it and everything else. He said it was too long, and it was too long. But he had good pointers. Gene's a very reputable fisheries biologist, and it just so happened that he was at Hal Schramm's this past week, so they had a chance to talk about it. I mean, these are the people that have been leading for years and years and years. So it is an experiment. There's no other way to phrase it, but it's got a good chance of showing an uptick. And I think that's what everybody wants to see, is those bigger, better quality,
Yep.
more aggressive fish. And even in Norman, where we know that it's kind of hurting for nutrients and other bio-based things that it needs, it's better to get one tater out of the pot than nothing.
That's right.
So
We just want to catch fish, right? I mean,
that's
what it boils down
I
to.
think that's what it boils down to. My concern is the part about habitat, and I have actually gotten a copy of what Duke has approved now, and it's going to be a little problematic, but that's okay. It's not just we're going to dump fish in and that's what's going to happen. No, it's going to be fish. It's going to be habitat. It's going to be dealing with all the other different things going on with it. And that's the thing I want to make sure everybody hears. It's not a single solution.
So where can myself or viewers go to view what Duke has approved as far as habitat? Because that would be interesting to see what they've approved.
Oh, I'll send it to you.
I'd love to see
Yeah,
it.
it's a PDF. Yeah. I thought I had sent it to you today.
Well, they did you sent me a grass study.
No. Today I sent it out today, and I sure thought I had sent it to you on private messenger.
Let me just see if I missed it.
If I didn't, it's my mistake.
Oh, deployment of fish tractors. Duke.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought I had sent it to you. I didn't
Interesting.
get it.
Well, I was sidetracked, so I
Okay.
looked at it and I didn't open it.
I'm sure you don't have anything else to do today.
No, not at all.
So, so while Dave is reading that, let's talk about the turnover. All
Okay.
Because we've given everybody about 20 minutes to get on here.
Okay.
Finishing up dinner time and stuff. So, so before we get into the scientific data
Mm-hmm.
that we're going to show, how about you give us a layman's definition of the turnover? Because I know it has to do with the thermocline, right?
Sure.
Because I think I know what it is, but I would like to hear. I learned a lot last week, or last time you were here, so before I open my mouth, I would like to hear the real answer of what it is.
Okay. Hey, guys, thank y'all very much for watching and the nice feedback we got last time, and I promise you, one of the biggest criticisms I receive in my life, as a matter of fact, some of the guys commented on it that actually watched it, were poking fun at me about the big words. If I get over 2 syllables, just there needs to be a buzzer or something.
We'll watch the comments.
Okay. All right. Before you can have turnover, you got to have stratification, and there's driving things that make that happen. And the easiest way to explain it is like I did last time, like a glass of tea that sits out and you end up with a clear layer on top, and it just layers out. It's that simple. Okay, what drives that? All right. The first thing is the same thing that causes the ice to melt, temperature. All right. When the temperature gets to a certain point in the springtime, the lake starts to build into layers.
And that's stratification.
That's stratification.
Okay.
And then there's a misconception about thermocline. It's actually 3 layers. And if you've ever looked at like a bottle of Italian dressing before you've shaken it up, and I've actually got one in the trunk I forgot to bring in so I could do the visual on it. But anyway, it separates into 3 layers. There's a clear oil layer on top, and
Yep.
then there's one that's got kind of chunks and some water and stuff like that, and then all the chunks sit on the bottom.
On the bottom.
That's the explanation of the thermocline right there.
Okay.
Okay, it's that simple. It does the same thing in a lake, it's just not as chunky. All right, so what's turnover? You shake the bottle up. Okay, what shakes the bottle up? Temperature. Once the temperature gets up to about 65 to 70 degrees, depending on how fast it warms up, the lake separates into layers. Once it goes below those temperatures,
The
depending on how
thermocline
it
goes
gets
away,
there,
right?
the thermocline goes away. That's what you call turnover.
Okay.
No more, no less.
All right. And then all that chunky stuff in the bottom, that's all the organic material that from
Yeah.
stuff that's died all summer long, or just
Yeah,
nasty
yeah.
stuff, right? 'Cause-
That's the best way to do it. And I use this analogy, and the limnologists all start looking for sharp objects when I do. But basically, what we fail to understand is that those lakes are not natural features. When they put that dam on that river, they've created a reservoir, which is an unnatural feature. And there are not natural features like in natural lakes, like the Great Lakes and Waccamaw and so forth, to cycle the water and keep it clean in a natural way. So basically, when you dam it up, what you've just done is created an open top septic tank. And it's going to collect and deposit every piece of junk that flows into it. Obviously, the stuff on the bottom is going to be the worst. You've been in mucky bottoms, and you know fish don't like them. They'd rather have sandy, gravelly type bottoms. You
Can't
know?
breathe. There's too much stuff floating around.
Right, and it's the same. It is the same exact principle. Is really what it boils down to. But then when it turns over, it's like your septic tank running over, and everything gets mixed, and those layers down at the bottom mixed with the ones on top. I've got some really good graphs showing that happen. I've got a series I did a couple years ago for a lake management conference where it happened on and off for about a week. It would stratify in the daytime, temperature go down at night,
about
turn
that?
over at night. And I mean, you could actually see what was going on with the DO and everything. And I've got some visuals I want to use because I want to show guys just exactly how extreme this can be.
So before we get into the science
Mhm.
of it, so a lot of our listeners tune in to hear not only about fish conservation, like we've been talking about, stocking programs, things like that, and learning, but they also want to know how to catch fish.
Sure.
Right. So,
I hope to help with that.
so the only thing that I can tell you about the turnover is I knew the definition of it, what you're talking about. Basically, the thermocline goes away, and the temperature is so similar that basically it can mix. It's like someone hit
That's
the blender and they just blended it
Yeah,
all up.
yeah, that's exactly right.
Um,
All right, but let me ask you this, because you're getting a pretty good little grasp on it. All right, you realize from what I said last time that when the lake is stratified, there's oxygen in the upper layers, and then there's kind of a middle transition layer where there's not as much oxygen, but some fish that prefer to be temperature oriented, like stripers and things
Yep.
like that, can get in there for a while.
That's right.
Okay, and then the bottom layer, there ain't nothing.
That's right.
Okay, it might as well be concrete, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so when it mixes, what do you think happens to the DO?
It goes down.
Bing, there you go. And everybody says, wow, the lake turned over, you can't catch fish. Well, if somebody put a hefty trash bag around your head and duct taped it on, you wouldn't really feel like eating that cheeseburger, and that's pretty much the deal.
DO stands
Dissolved
for
oxygen.
dissolved
I'm
oxygen.
sorry. I'm
right?
sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
So what I do when I see turnover water, and it's here you go, right on par. So Jerry Craig, what does the water look like? So to me, when I see it, it looks off colored. Like you can look like wherever you came from, the water could be clear or muddy or whatever. When you get to a portion where the water has turned over, it's got like a frothy foam on it sometimes, and almost like an off-colored brown to it is way. It looks off.
Kind of like the whole main channel from the bridge down just below the lighthouse looked on Wiley this weekend. It wasn't mud. It just had the brown, frothy, tannic turnover
Tannic
look.
looking.
Yeah.
And I will tell you this too: if the wind is blowing and it's blown in a specific direction for a long time, it will blow that turnover water to whatever side of the bank it's hitting on. Is what I
Sure,
have seen.
yeah, it'll do that.
So the only way that I know how to fish out of the turnover is, first of all, run away from it, and second of all, the dissolved oxygen content. The fish can't breathe, they can't live, they're not going to eat. Is to go shallow, because boat traffic, wind, whatever you want to call it, the turnover. Turnover is a bad word there. The constant undulation, I guess you'd call it, of waves or just surface agitation.
He used that big word, not me, okay? Undulation.
Surface agitation puts oxygen back into water, right?
Some, but it is not anywhere near as much as most people think.
Okay.
Now, in saying that, then the limnologists are now looking for their sharp object again. Yes, on the Great Lakes, on the ocean, large bodies of water, on our thin, narrow channel lakes and things like that, no. Not unless you've got something, where you've got 20, 30 mile an hour winds. So, yeah.
It's
there's
like
a
Wiley
difference.
this weekend. It was weird. So we fished from the bridge, worked our way south. Got down to Clearwater, stopped getting bit. Came right back up into the tannic looking water where the wind was blowing 25 miles an hour, and fished in the wind and got bit.
Yes.
But okay, so we've talked about temperature, right? So the water temperature was what, 78?
It was pretty
80?
No, it's actually just a lot cooler than that, 76.
Okay.
Now you run into the creeks. I found 74 in the back one. Half, 3/4 of the way back in a creek.
So what is, if I put my boat in the water and I'm worried about turnover, is there a magic temperature threshold that I need to worry about?
65 to 72.
65 to 72.
And it's how fast did it cool down? Like what we just saw happen with the temperature going from 80s, 90s to 40s overnight.
Yeah.
It will turn over at a higher temperature.
Okay.
Particularly if there's wind action, and also if they're generating power or they're pushing water through here.
Right. It's going to help.
What
turn up
you just
anyways.
said is key. Those main channels are going to be less susceptible to turnover and to stratification, even though it does happen, than it will be back in a creek. I mean, it's the same thing like if you have a big rainfall and all of a sudden you see this big mud flush come down the river. But you know that you can see how far back into the creek it's penetrated. The thermocline does the same thing. Same thing. The less disturbed it is, the more thermocline sets up. Places like Jordan, where, the explanation that you've got, it takes 500 days for a bucket of water to get from the top of the New Hope branch to the dam, the thermocline is strong. And some of my city lakes where we're not generating power or anything like that, it's crazy strong. I mean, it's pretty stark, but it's also a lot easier before turnover to pattern the fish. when turnover does occur, it's much more difficult.
Okay. Jughead. Shane's on here. I don't think you're not Jughead. I don't know if that's you or me.
I'm not sure who he's referring to.
Uh-oh.
That's just Shane.
That's just Shane.
Okay. Hey, Shane. Miss
He
you,
must have
bud.
landed.
Oh yeah, he's been landed.
Yeah. He's probably playing Golf Clash on his phone right now.
Spades.
Spades?
It's probably spades.
I think so. You better be working on making sure he wins the Champion Cup or whatever they're going to call it on Fishing University this time. They always fish for something.
I know. Oh boy.
All right, so 65 to 72.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so let's get into some of this data now,
Okay.
if that's all right.
Sure. Let's back into it to something that is easy to digest first. Let's look at the depth finder
All right,
screenshots.
the depth finder screenshots. All right, you guys bear with me just a second here. We're going to have to switch to a PowerPoint. Let's see if it works.
Yeah, just start with depth and we're fine.
Let me get us in slideshow here. All right. David, let me know when it changes.
Press.
So here's
TikTok.
here's depth. Okay.
All right. This is a screenshot of what most guys are going to say, oh, hey, there's the thermocline. And they're right.
I'd be complaining because my sensitivity's too high.
That is out of the box. I hadn't touched a button.
Okay.
Okay. But that's also in Randleman Lake, where the water is not moved for power generation. It's just a very small amount taken out for water supply. So this is what I'm talking about, an extreme example of where you can see it very, very well. Okay. That's the bottom thermocline. Okay. How do I know? All right, because it's solid as a rock. That's the bottom part of that Italian dressing bottle where it's thick. All right. Now I'm going to answer another question that we skimmed across, and you say, okay, how can you tell it happened? The best way to tell when that thermocline turns over is if you're in a situation where you see that thick of a bottom thermocline, if it smells like rotten eggs, you've had turnover.
Okay.
Because if you went down there and got a sample of this water, it's horrible.
And when you mean the bottom, you're talking about literally. I wish I could. Everybody can just see the. Uh-oh. What's going on here? All right. I might have to keep it in this view because it went to depth.
I can still walk through it.
All right. So when you're talking about the bottom, it'll update here in a second.
Remember there's 3 layers going on.
Yep.
Okay. That bottom layer where nothing can live. I don't care what those little blips on there say where that blue streaky stuff is. They're false signals. Or
Okay.
either there's something on the outside of the cone. Okay?
You're good. Keep going.
All
I'm
right.
just zooming in.
Now, how do I know where the upper layer is? All right. Remember we talked about there's certain fish that are going to orient to temperature over oxygen.
Yep.
This is open water. This is right at the 220 bridge over Randleman. The yellow is
yellow
that
bar
middle
right here?
layer.
Okay.
That's those fish that are holding. And you see most of the
can-
fish you see in there are holding in that middle layer in open water.
Yep,
Those
you
are
can see-
pelagic type fish.
You can see a couple right here, right below the line too.
That's right. They're sitting right on it.
Yep.
Okay, those are probably big catfish or something like that.
Or striper that are too dumb to know not to breathe. As Shane would say.
They're that bad. I mean, one of the most notorious lake I know for that is Baden, because it's got a section where it is very stagnant. It's got a section where the water runs pretty hard. The fish get confused. They get below the wrong place. They turn it over. They're dead before they even know what happens. So yeah,
They
you're
just
right.
kind of go to sleep, right? I've seen them floating before down at the
Yeah.
dam at Lake Norman back when there was a bunch of them. Now there's hardly. They put hybrids in there.
Yeah.
Not to get in on another subject, but
But the white part up there at the top is the part where you would expect to find bass.
Mhm.
Okay, because that's going to be dissolved oxygen levels above a certain their toxic threshold. All right, so that is an extreme instance. Let's look at the second slide, and I'll explain where we're going with
all
that
right. So
one.
before we get any further,
sure.
all right. So here's
Sure.
going to be my
Read on.
scientific questions, right?
All right.
I'm on a learning fact finding mission myself.
Okay.
So, this bar that you highlighted in yellow, is that just a focus on that area, or is there like a specific?
Like, the scientific test that you could fact check me on that is, remember when you were a kid, you jumped off the boat, you went down a certain,
Yep.
and all
You
of a
feel
sudden
how
your
it
feet
get
got
cold.
cold. That yellow bar is where your feet got cold.
Okay, but you were saying to target for the bass is actually the white above it.
Correct.
That's where the dissolved oxygen is going to be the best. It's also
Yes.
where the water temperature is going to be the hottest too, right?
Yes, it is, but it's also, now you're looking at a third factor that's coming in, that the sun can't penetrate
Yep.
past a certain point. So that also contributes to the dissolved oxygen being missing in the yellow band,
Okay.
where it's higher in the upper band. I mean, there's something called supersaturation where you can have 120% oxygen in that upper layer because the sun's making the algae grow, which is producing oxygen. It's
Okay.
just chlorophyll. I mean, it's just that simple.
All right. So this next graph picture.
This is much shallower. You're looking at 10 feet. Well, now all of a sudden you don't have that hard object in there showing you where that bottom layer on the thermocline is. Well, it's not 60 feet deep either,
Right.
so it doesn't have the opportunity to set up. But can you have a thermocline in shallow water? And your answer is yes. Can you see it? Not the same way you can in that deeper water with, just like I said, out of the box type stuff. Here, and Shane said this the last time I was down here, the fish tell you where it is. This is a Christmas tree laying
Down there
on
on the
its
bottom,
side.
right here.
Yep, that's a Christmas tree. Those fish know that Christmas tree is there, and they want to be in the cover on the structure. Okay, that actually is a sunken road bed, and it's sitting right on the rise off that road bed.
So that's the road bed
That's
right
the
there.
road bed, right?
So to break this down for your electronics guys, so this is I don't know anything about your setup, but this is a Lowrance graph.
Mm-hmm.
This is on pallet 1,
Mm-hmm.
and you can see
Right out of the box.
So on pallet 1, the yellow band here is a hard return. Okay, and contrary to lots of beliefs, we can get into this in depth later on. I can do an electronic session for you guys if you want, but the wider this yellow band is, the softer the bottom is, or the softer the whatever your cone is
Substrate,
hitting.
right, yeah.
Okay, so when Frazier said there's a road bed right here, I saw it before you said it because you can see how the band gets a lot thinner from here to here,
Mm-hmm.
and then it gets wider again. So
Right.
I wish they could see my hands, but literally from here to here is your road bed, and whoever sank that Christmas tree did a daggone good job of hitting their spot, because I'm terrible at sinking brush. Did you sink this one?
I plead the fifth.
Okay.
No, I did not, but I did find it.
Okay.
I mean, I know to go looking for it. I know people are going to put stuff out there.
Yep.
And I have absolutely no problem pirating somebody's structure. Or,
Right. I believe we all do. If
Hey, if you find it, it's fair.
That's right.
It's like leftovers in the refrigerator. If you put them in there, they're fair game.
I'll never forget. Sinking some maple trees, standing straight
I
up,
found those pretty quick.
and it didn't take you long to find them. But you're one of only 3 that I know of that have even looked there for them.
I know where they are. I've known where they are for a long time. You just saw me fishing one time here
I did.
recently.
I had to call you out on it.
The interesting part about that right there is that the fish know that's there, and they're trying to get down on it,
Right.
but they can't.
Because of the oxygen.
Right. So they're telling you pretty much where they're at with that red dotted line. Is that like, could I put an instrument in there and measure and say that's exactly where it's at? No, because in that 2-layer thermocline in shallower water, it's a more transitional issue. It's not as hard as that 3-layer stratification we saw on the slide before.
Gotcha.
So,
And I don't know if they can read your notes down here, but it says even with weak objects on the bottom below the oxygen thermocline, they, as a fish, they still want to gravitate and hold on to it, but they can't without suffocating. So
Right.
that's what you're seeing here. You're seeing some fish break out of the school and just they're programmed to go to something to hold on. And I guess they're pretty much holding their breath, right? And then they realize they got to go back up to where they can actually breathe. So this is a great depiction, and I know you've seen this before out here. I have as well.
I like
But
it when the water
typically-
temperature's about.
Half that.
I like it when the water temperature's about half that,
Yeah,
and it
no,
looks like that.
Now, if I saw that, I wouldn't even have cracked the big motor. I would have just kept on letting it rip.
well, and you know what?
Again,
You're right.
water temperature half that, it's game on. Right now, bye.
So Shane just asked that, what technique would you use to try and catch those fish? So me would be,
I wouldn't. I'd keep going.
I was saying mine would be called a hot foot.
Yeah, there you
to
go.
the floor.
I would agree.
Yeah, with that water temperature, you might be able to put something in
Yeah,
front
you want
of
to go
them.
back one or
Let's go all the way back up the top.
all the way to the
Yeah,
top?
because I'll explain exactly where we're trying to get to with that. All right, we're
Okay.
going to start with the first slide.
Right there?
All right, this, Shane, forgive me, because I know you and the elites are not going to be happy about me telling this. We talked about it topically last time, and I made myself a promise I would show these 4 slides because
Well, Shane's not here.
I know, but he knows how to find me. But anyway, this you hear a lot about guys that pull up on a spot and they say, "Oh yeah, I can catch fish there." All right, and note that the water temperature over there on the left is 68 degrees. Okay, so we're right somewhere with or without a thermocline. It's right there at that breaking point.
That's right.
I did that on purpose.
Because you said 65 to 72. I'm going to keep
Right.
repeating that so I remember it.
That's fine. All right, but here you go. If you pull up on a spot, and everybody that's ever watched like any undersea video has seen these crazy things where you got these giant sharks, and everybody's swimming around happy, the bait's swimming around, and the stuff that eats the bait, and the things that the sharks eat, and everything, and everybody's happy, and nobody knows nothing, and it's just kind of everybody wandering around. When you see flat bait, that's happy bait. Okay? Me, I'm not going to waste my time with it. Shane, some of these other guys, I'm a weekend fisherman. I ain't got time to mess with it. Okay, next slide.
It's all bunched up.
It's all bunched up, and you see these shadows that are coming at it, and
Yep.
that's the whole school mentality of bait. This, I'm gonna think through. I'm gonna slow down for a minute and maybe look around and see if there's something where those fish are being herded to back them up against something. Next slide.
That's enough about wintertime fishing. We'll just shut that.
Cat scratches.
Signing out now, boys.
Cat scratches. If you see cat scratches and you're not catching something, it's either the wrong bait or the wrong game fish.
Or you just suck.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so
All right, and
people will send me this picture. I could go through my Facebook Messenger and show you 100 direct messages with this exact picture. And then when I ask, they always ask me, why is there not a defined arc on this?
Moving too fast.
That's exactly right. So you can see right here, this is where it came into the cone, and this is where it went out of the cone,
Which is why it's diagonal.
and that's why it's diagonal.
Yeah, and
Because
there's a lot
they
of-
hit it those fish are moving, and they are moving very fast.
Okay.
And they're getting their bellies fat
That's
and
right.
happy.
All right, next one. All right, this is the one that most of the guys really want to get a little advanced and try to pick through. Obviously, the game fish has split them into a couple of different schools. Which one's the bigger fish? I don't know. You don't know. Not from looking at that picture. But when they're out there and they're digging through those schools, typically they're going to gravitate. Smaller fish in one, bigger fish in the other. Okay, and that's kind of the way it's going to work. Next one. And this is the one you asked me about with the alewives. And these are just taken seconds apart. You can look at the times and see how they do. Some of them are a little spaced out because I had to get the sequence that I wanted. But the bottom line is now all of a sudden you got these 2 humps on the bottom that weren't there. All right, what that is those open water pelagic bait fish.
And they glue to the bottom.
They've gone straight to the bottom and they're risking suffocating versus getting eaten, which suffocating they might have a shot if the game fish go on and move somewhere else, but suffocating they might can hold their breath for a while, you know, and that's then you add the thermocline and this becomes a very predictable pattern. In this case, the next slide after the guy went away, I went and saw what it was. The fish, I wouldn't fish in open water like that. I don't know how to fish in open water like that. But what I did was I found what the game fish were pushing the bait up against, and it turned out to be a road bed.
Yeah.
A sharp drop of the road bed. So they weren't just in open water darting through them.
Changed your palette too.
Well, it's the 455.
I got you.
You know, I had them both run at the same time to show both things.
Yeah, so this is down imaging for our viewers,
Right.
and this is your 2D graph. I'm saying this is, so that's actually palette 13 on Lowrance 2D, and that one right there is still palette number 1.
Right.
So those are the 2. I get asked all the time, what pallets do you run? Those are the 2 that I would suggest.
Right.
We can go off on another tangent for that, but
Well, the one thing I want guys to realize is, especially the guys that don't have a lot of experience using equipment and finding fish and everything else, is I went to a lot of trouble to make sure that I put these in the 8120 views so that even with the least expensive depth finder from any manufacturer, it's
Yep.
going to give you the same information. You don't. I mean, certainly all of the other wells and whistles and gadgets you got are awesome. They're there for a reason, and they're usable information. But if you don't have them, you can still compete just by knowing that little bit of information.
So let's go
I'm gonna
back to
tell you,
this.
I'm gonna put you on notice right now.
Yeah.
No more about fishing, more about thermocline, because what I mean, really and truly, I'll let the cat out of the bag. What you just went over is really and truly how you pinpoint offshore fish. The depths just change a little bit. They do the exact same thing.
Yep.
It's a matter of timing and knowing when those fish are out feeding on bait or up feeding on bait, or when they're glued to whatever structure they're pushing the bait across.
So let's talk through this one more time.
So David's angry with me.
He is.
I'm not angry. No, it's just I
This
knew
is a
when I
great-
got into this that there were going to be things that I'd like to thought that I had figured out that we're sharing with the mass public.
The thing about it is, and this, and I tell people this all the time. I could go fishing with you, front or back of the boat, wouldn't matter, and I might or might not be able to catch your fish your way. I brought you a gift this evening where I know that I can go there and do that with those baits, and I'm gonna walk away with a big bag. That one was right at 20 pounds. Okay, but that's me doing it my way. So I don't mind telling people something. And then the other thing is something that you kind of skipped across, and that's timing.
I didn't stutter over. I just skipped
I know.
across.
I know. I mean, I can go back to that same spot 20 times in a day, and the fish won't bite. And that's what guys don't understand about going from beating the bank to doing a little bit more.
Well, and the key to figuring out the timing, this, is time on the water.
Right.
Okay, every year it's different. The big bags I've caught out deep on Wiley have come at all different portions of the day, but it's after a period of time that I know this group of fish is going to feed at this time. You go there 2 hours before, and they might be a completely different size.
Right. Exactly.
And it's just a matter of spending the time to know what to look for, when to look for it, and when to be there.
Right. And it's different every lake. It varies on a day-to-day basis in a lot of different ways. It depends on how they're running water. We talked to that when we were offline. So there's a lot of different variables that aren't there. But, I don't mind giving the guys a
So we have a question, and I think it's more about what Duke does with the lakes as opposed to making it better fishing for the reservoirs. But we have a viewer here asking, why doesn't Lake Norman, Mountain Island, and Wiley run more water more often like the Tennessee River to maybe help with turnover? So is it true that our lakes, they don't have to run water through the dams to make power anymore?
I can answer some of this.
Some of those, some yes. It's simple whether it's hydroelectric or not. I mean, if it's nuke or if it's steam, they don't necessarily have to run water through the dam.
Right, they pump it in one place and then pump it out back into the lake, right?
Well, to
So-
a holding pond, yeah.
Yeah, so the dams are pretty much for
Hydroelectric.
or level control.
But again, the EPA directs a lot of how Duke has to pull at Wiley. Okay, they have to have X amount of flow
A day,
for
yeah.
water quality. For now, they've started this thing with the recreational use for the water below the dam. They have to pull X amount of water for kayakers and tubers and whatnot
And
on
now
the
they've got
weekends.
now they have a big project. They're putting aerators in everywhere.
And
right?
they're talking about aerators. They're putting in a bladder system at Watery Dam to try to help control the big inflows on the floods in the spring, so that they don't get sued time and time again to replace docks for homeowners down there. And so there's a lot of circumstances that they can't. I mean, we don't have the water to just send down the line.
Right.
Once it's gone, you can't get it back.
Not
Drink.
in general, no.
Is there anything else you want to cover here?
I
or
don't,
do you
I
want
don't
to go
think
on?
so. I
Okay.
think we've irritated some people enough.
All right. Let me get to.
But it's all part and parcel of that thermocline. Like the flatfish that we saw, all that's happening above the thermocline. Period. So kind of is what it is. All right. This is a little more technical, guys. I'm sorry, we're going to have to make some guys glaze over here a little bit, but there's some reasons I want to show you this.
I'll watch the viewers for you, make sure we're not losing them too fast.
Okay, all right. And just tell me if we are, because this is pretty neat stuff. You've seen these floating platforms like in tail races and out in the lake, and they say stay away from it. They're making scientific measurements or anything else. We were one of the people that pioneered those instruments. And I've got one at both of the intakes of the two lakes that we're responsible for managing, and I'm responsible for keeping this equipment up. All right. So what's going on when the lake is not stratified, and what's going on with it when it is stratified? There's a couple of pieces of information here I want to show you, because it's going to explain some things that a lot of guys know but don't know necessarily why. All right. This is a graph of the dissolved oxygen concentration versus depth with the lake unstratified. Microsoft, in their infinite wisdom, is self-scaling. And those lines technically are very parallel. If you look at the lowest amount of dissolved oxygen, it's 9.22. If you look at the highest amount, it's 9.92. But in general, most of it is up between about 9.6 and 9.9. All right. So there's 0.3 of a milligram per liter oxygen difference across the day. What's the difference? All right. Well, the green line is noon. It's the highest and most consistent. Why noon?
Sun's
Because
directly overhead.
sun's directly overhead, but basically, why is it different than the black line, which is midnight? The answer is that midnight, the algae's not making as much chlorophyll because it doesn't have any sunlight. Okay? And then by 6 o'clock in the morning, you got the lowest DO when you've got the longest period of dark. It's not rocket science.
So oxygen content is directly affected by how much oxygen is given off by the algae in the water.
There's your answer right there.
So that's why noon, when the sun is directly overhead, you got to have water and sunlight for stuff to grow, right? So it's releasing oxygen. Your black line's midnight. Obviously, there's no sun at all, right? And then from 6 a.m. on, I guess you really don't have much.
No, down to 6 a.m.,
light.
but then it starts turning around, going back up.
That's
Remember, it's metabolism. It's like your body. If you run from here to the street, your heartbeat's going to go up, and it's going to take a minute for it to come back down.
Right.
This is the same thing that's going on, but I want to explain the blue line. 6 p.m. Well, Bill, if this is all relative to sunlight, why is that blue line crisscrossing all the way across the entire graph? The answer is it's produced enough chlorophyll and algae by the longest photo period of the day, the largest amount of sunlight, that the algae is actually shading it out. So the DO starts going down. The dissolved oxygen goes down because the sunlight can't penetrate as deep in the water.
Okay.
Because there's more algae being produced. The algae is actually producing shade.
Gotcha. So it actually blocks itself out.
That's correct.
Same way that hydrilla and stuff dies off and breaks off when it canopies and mats, it shades its roots and they end up dying.
That's correct.
That's exactly what the blue line's showing here with algae, right?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
exactly right. Okay. Let's flip over to the yellow one. And this is where we're gonna
Where we
try
headed
to
from
connect
here?
some dots. We want to go to July, August 22nd.
All right.
Guys.
So all this is on NC State's website.
Right.
It's ncsu.edu
Slash
/WQ for water quality. So August of 2020.
Yeah, any of the lakes in North Carolina that have got these platforms at NC State, the 22nd first.
22nd.
Any of the lakes that NC State does this monitoring for are on there. Falls Lake, Noose, some pretty neat stuff there.
So back to milligrams per liter.
Yep. Now, I want to show you something. The first thing is that we have aeration in this lake. Okay? So we're attempting to keep those layers mixed. Are they? No. But look at the maximum dissolved oxygen concentration.
It's at 3.75.
All right. Toxicity starts occurring at 2.5
How about that?
for bass. So by mixing that lake, we're getting a little more uniform, but the bad part is is it's just there's so much stress in the middle, in late August and everything else that there's just only so much dissolved oxygen. Look at the colored lines. They pretty much agree with what we said before.
Yep.
Okay, in general, there's a little catching up to do, but what you're really looking for is where the numbers on the left intersect the lines at 2.5. That's your thermocline.
So 4 foot. So what you're saying is a thermocline.
2.5 is going to be about right there, right?
So what you're saying is the thermocline
It's 1 meter.
can change throughout the day.
Yes.
That's what you're showing here.
That's correct.
So it'll start off shallower in the morning
That's correct.
and get higher in the water column as the day goes on.
Right. And here, because we've got such high metabolism and such high production, the midnight line is the most consistent and the highest DO. Why do people go fish at night
Because there's no pleasure boaters.
in the summertime? Why are they catching these giant fish?
Because it's cool and there's no pleasure boaters.
That's mechanically a good answer, but here there's a scientific reason why. That's when the DO is the highest during the day, during those extremely stressed periods.
There you go.
Yeah. Unfortunately, night fishing just sucked this year. So evidently, science is wrong for once.
Well, they got to be in the lake for you to catch them.
That's true too. That is a fair assessment.
I'll be honest with you. Since the last time I was on here, one of the biggest questions that I've got asked is, where are the fish? And everybody is talking about it in the fisheries community. But there's not a blame. That's not it. But because of a very radical shift from COVID, where everybody is out and they're fishing and everything else, we actually had some people in our Parks and Recreation department complaining that too many people were bank fishing and they were cleaning the lake out. Dr. Hal Schramm had just put something out recently about fish learning.
I read that. That was on Bass's website.
Right.
Well,
and the fish are beat up. They're avoiding us.
look at it. Okay, what are the last 3 greatest inventions, we'll say, in bass fishing, lure wise? Take your last 3 picks.
Me?
Yeah, or just for throw it out there.
I'm a bad person to ask that, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm one of those people that enjoys force feeding fish.
Okay.
I want them to eat what I want them to eat, and
All right, Brandon, I'll ask you.
Yeah.
What are the last 3 most innovative fishing lures?
Well, so for around here, let's see. So the elephant in the room is obviously the Alabama rig.
That's 1.
The chatterbait made a huge
That's 2. Let's see if you get number 3 correct.
break on the scene. I'm gonna go with square bill,
You're wrong.
drop
Whopper
shot.
plopper.
whopper plopper.
I'm just saying, as far as innovative,
Yeah,
not seen
yeah.
before baits, that these fish, you saw it. You went to Norman.
Yeah.
You threw a whopper plopper
I had a
first
whopper
year.
plopper for like 2 years before anybody knew what they were.
And-
I ordered mine straight from Larry Dahlberg.
That's right. And for the first 2 years of the whopper plopper, they would absolutely annihilate. There was no thought. There was no mist. There was no anything.
It was dumb.
pure T
Yeah.
choke every time. Guess what? 5-6 years later now, how many fish you miss on a whopper plopper?
How many guys ended up digging hooks out of themselves because they missed?
I think we all have. A-Rig, prime example. A-Rig came out. I was Brian Huskins actually made me a few A-Rigs shortly after Paul Elias weighed the big bag that he did. And we came out here in September and started catching them on A-Rigs. It was...
Poor Buster Boy Bridge got absolutely obliterated for 2 months because that's where everybody thought you had to throw it.
That's right. I mean, it was pure T ignorance. You could go find a ball of bait like you saw on the screen, fire the bait out behind you, start winding it slow, and it'd swing through the bait, and you'd get bit every time. 3-4 years it was like that, and then everybody started throwing it. It's not like that anymore. Chatterbait. Ron Davis came up with a chatterbait. Brian Thrift, several others had it first. They won a lot of tournaments around here on it. Then local people had it. Won a lot of tournaments on it. Now, yeah, you can get bit on a chatterbait, but it's not what it was when it first came out.
Right. And we talked about that before the podcast started about, you know, how lures will cycle.
And so it's
Yep.
like you said with COVID. So we're out here
The spinnerbait's coming back now.
fishing. Well, that's the thing. You're fishing every weekend. I mean, there's a 300% inflow of new fishermen into the fishing community, which is awesome. Those of us that are tournament anglers just got to change up our game a little bit because it's not so easy anymore.
Right.
Like you said, spinnerbait is making a comeback.
Spinnerbait's making a comeback for sure.
There's a few other baits that I could see potentially for the next month and a half could be quite interesting. That a lot of guys have forgotten about. They just don't throw.
What was it that Aaron Martins won the classic down here on? Underspin?
Yeah, he didn't win that one.
That was
Taka
Casey.
Hero did.
Which one?
Aaron Martins threw an underspin
On the
off
bridge.
On the
Yeah,
bridge and
Talk
never left
one up in the river on a B2. But yes, Aaron Martin sat under the bridge for an entire tournament and caught fish on underspin.
Right.
it. Danny, if we knew what the next big lure was, we'd be throwing it or have made it. Cash in on that one.
Danny, from the tackle side of things, I'm going to be really honest with you. Between ICAST last couple of years, I feel like right now we're in kind of a copycat lull in the industry. There's not necessarily going to be that new innovation.
That's what everybody says until it comes out.
Well, I'm just saying for right now everything's kind of status quo. There's not been anything drastically different enough for me as a store owner to say, that's got potential to be something great.
I'm going to behave.
I say what you guys. I mean, I don't behave.
Well, you know, like I said, I'm
except
I'm
for
a
you
very-
and your 24-inch Cincos.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a firm believer that stuff cycles back around because I don't want to mention his name, but one of the elite pros showed me how to tune a buzzbait, and I can't. I mean, the biggest bag of fish I ever caught, I caught on it after he showed me how to do it. I can't tell you how much money I've won on it. Guys that I have shared the tricks with it, they win money on it, and that's
Cut the
with
camera.
that's with everybody else, you know, out there throwing buzz baits and whopper ploppers and everything else. Like, what in the world is the difference between a whopper plopper and a buzz bait? But they're killing a whopper plopper, and all of a sudden they're not biting a buzz bait again. Yeah.
Well, okay, take DD22. Mike Seawright, Gene Webster, Ted Mobley, and several other guys. I mean, they were loading crankbaits before people really knew what crankbaits were.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got tweaks, so to speak, you can make to crankbaits to make them do bigger and better things, depth-wise. And
I was going to say that was at a time when crankbaits, if you got one that would go 16 feet deep out of the package, it was a big deal. Now
again,
you've got them that you can cast them and they'll hit 30.
the problem is what is the profile difference?
Yeah.
That's where the big play comes into factor. Is
Do you remember when the Man's 30 Plus came out?
well, okay. That was probably a wee bit before my time in the bass industry.
I'm just saying.
No, I've thrown them.
I remember.
I have personally thrown that plug, and I'm going to tell you what.
Everybody and their brother wanted them. You couldn't find them anywhere.
Yeah.
It
And
takes
they were
a
$5.
it takes a bigger man than me to throw and wind it all day. I'll just say that now. I like to crank. I love to throw a crankbait, but that plug will work you to death.
They don't make my favorite one anymore.
Which one?
The Hot Lips.
Well, you know a guy that's got several.
I know there's a lot of tweaks. Well, never mind.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you,
we've all boiled the lips and flattened them out and done different things to them.
stick lead weights in the nose and
Yep.
epoxy over them. I mean, I remember that whole deal with the bags leaves back in the 80s. I mean, that was the deal.
Drill them out, let them, or load them up.
Yeah. Yeah.
There are, like I said, every bait there's some way to modify it to make it better. Chatterbaits. There's guys that cut the skirts a specific way on a chatterbait. They think it swims better that way.
Well, I do that with my jigs.
Again, there's all kinds of tweaks that
I'll buy a jig. First thing I do is pull the skirt apart, put it in my skirt maker, and do it the way I want it.
There you go.
So yeah, I mean, I can't think of more than a half a dozen lures that I'll fish out of the package. Period.
I think we're all the same way on that. There's a saying that that I always, when someone asks me if I think this matters, I always tell them, if you think it matters, it matters.
That's right.
Well, but again,
Because of your whole
how much of it comes
confidence
out
in
to
it.
be right here?
Well, that's the
all,
thing.
all of what's between your ears matters the most.
That's exactly right. That's what I was saying. If you think it matters, it matters.
I mean, it's like I've asked you about jerkbait several different times. You throw 2 or 3 colors. It doesn't matter.
I got 1,000 of them, but I throw 2 or 3.
I mean, you know, it's to each his own on that deal. You know, you got to do you.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how to do you.
That's what I said. I mean, that's why I don't mind sharing those slides about some of the stuff and telling people that, because they're still going to have to figure it out.
Sure.
You know, I've got some young men I've worked with over the years that are really, you know, that came up through the BASS youth ranks with Bob and some of those guys, Rod Goodall, and they've got their strengths, you know, but they all have got that focus, you know, and they go out there, they do it their way, and they're fine. And even one of the guys I enjoy fishing with as much as anybody I've ever had in a boat with me tells me, he says, I can't tournament fish with you. And he's right. He's doing great, you know, in partner tournaments up in our area fishing with somebody else because his strengths are not my strengths, you know. So
Well, I think when you're fishing as a team, you've got to have somebody that complements your strengths.
right.
Okay, you know, you might be great at flipping bushes, but if they get on a topwater bite, yeah, you can catch fish on topwater, but maybe your partner needs to just take over the head of the boat that day because he can do
Oh yeah.
twice as many
Yeah.
things when it
It-
comes to that.
Like with he and I'll go out and I'll bang offshore structure with, you know, that 12-inch worm from Caraway Creek, and he looks at me like I'm Russian or something. He'd rather be throwing a DD-22, you know. So and he'll catch his fish and I'll catch mine, you know. But it's a very different animal there. But those are two different power type situations. you know.
But they're complementary.
Yeah.
If you want to be offshore, you got somebody behind you that's doing something else effective.
Right.
You know, if I go offshore and I got Brandon who prefers to throw a jig in a topwater or whatever, can he catch fish offshore? Yes, I've seen it. But is he second guessing that all day?
Yeah.
He is.
Yeah, exactly right. Exactly
He is.
right.
Yeah, while we're out there, I'm looking at the bank, going, "Yeah, I've got him over there."
Exactly. Your focus is off target.
How long have we been out here?
Yeah. Oh yeah. My nemesis is docks. I don't know what it is. There's just like a brain fog or something. I can't catch a fish off a dock. I can probably count them on one hand in 36 years of tournament fishing. You know, I just can't do it.
They get on them.
Do what?
They get on them.
Oh, I know, but I can't figure it out.
Well, the thing is I don't know if this is true because I'm no expert at it, but I know this. If you catch one fish off of a dock in a certain place, most of the time you go to another dock similar, the fish is going to be sitting in the same place.
Oh yeah, I get that. yeah, like you know where the sun's on the pole this way and the wind's blowing. Yeah, I get it. But it's like some kind of brain fog when I can go a different place and I can load the boat. I don't want to pick
You
up
like
the
to sit
docks.
down and catch 10 or 15 and be done with it, then pick one.
Right.
I just like setting the hook on them.
I'm the same. I don't care how I catch them. I wish I could figure out docks a little better than I do.
I will say a good jig bite is when you slide it in there and the line just thunk and you cross their eyes, it's fun.
Oh yeah, no, I know.
Doesn't always work that way, but it's fun.
Oh, I love throwing a jig, especially offshore. I had the opportunity through Mr. Eric Winter at Bass Pro Shops after a kind of strange trip out on Randleman Lake when it first opened, where you could throw a beer can in the water and catch a fish. He hooked it up where I could go out with Kevin Van Dam, and they filmed 2 episodes on Randleman Lake, and one of them was offshore jigs. And that's my thing. I just like fishing offshore.
Man, I thought you were going to say you got to fish the aquarium up there.
Oh no! I don't care anything about fishing the aquarium. When Randleman first opened, it was about as bad as fishing the aquarium. But man, getting that jig bite out on open water like that, and we were just catching fish after fish after fish. It was awesome. I love doing that. But sitting and throwing that jig at a dock.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it seems to be. Jody writes on here. He's got a point. All the A rigs cause the jig fish to get better in the wintertime and in the fall, and I didn't want to do it, but I did it because it's a very good way to get paid on the Catawba chain.
Somebody else giving up secrets. Thank you, Joe.
Well, guys, we're coming up on an hour and 10 minutes. So,
Any questions on turnover you want to know anything about?
yeah,
The few people that are
I'm
still.
still trying to learn how to spell
Did we lose
stratification,
him?
but
We're status quo.
Okay.
no, I think this was
Not
great.
not quite as high as we were with the controversy over the evil spotted bass, but
So we talked about
Sorry,
the
Shane.
thermocline when it happens. So, what makes it go away?
Temperature goes down.
Falls to the point where it just doesn't exist anymore.
65 to 72.
So as soon as it gets under 65, this all organic stuff falls back to the bottom.
No, it actually mixes up
Okay.
because your water mixes.
Yep.
It's the same thing as shaking that salad dressing bottle. You're doing the same thing.
Okay.
It just is. It's thermal from the temperature versus mechanical.
Gotcha.
So, and
Is
the
it-
aeration will make it.
Is it true that there is a? So I read an article one time. I believe it was actually a South Carolina pro that wrote it. Is it true that there is a spring turnover
There's a spring stratification.
stratification, which is layman's term layering?
Yes.
Okay.
That's when the layers set up.
Okay.
And you've got a lot of these guys, and I understand exactly what they're saying, but it's like they're out there and they're fishing at a certain depth, and all of a sudden they look at their depth finder and the fish are 7 feet higher in the column. The lake is stratified. The layers have set up. They no longer can be down there, and they're calling that a turnover, which it's not a turn over. It's a layering. It's the same difference. It sets up that way, stays that way until the water temperature goes back down. But functionally, it has the same thing.
or until you have a major change. Like I've seen it out here where
flow can do it.
you get you'll have 2, 3, 4 weeks where there's no flow and everything's status quo, and all of a sudden they get a big rain and they start pulling a bunch of water, and guess what? The entire lake changes
Yes,
because of that.
exactly right.
I've seen it in crazy low front situations too. So I'm trying to remember how many years ago this was. It was like Hurricane Matthew or something like that,
That'll do it.
and it came through. It was super low pressure. We're supposed to get hit with a hurricane, and it didn't happen. It went up the coast. It was when you were having your Thursday night fish off thing.
I remember that year.
And literally, it turned over
instantly.
instantly.
Well, it's similar to what we had out here this past we had the hurricane hit down in the Gulf. The rain came up through. They sucked the bottom out of the lake. The rain hit. You go out there now, and it's like completely different lake.
Right, and the cooler that water is, the slower that thermocline will reset. Because you're getting to the point. I mean, I saw water temperatures at 72 at Tillery this past Saturday.
It's not far away from getting to the point where we're
won't
past
set.
all that.
That's right.
With the cold nights and the, I mean they're gonna keep the Catawba chain from Mountain Island or Wiley south low this winter, a foot below what they normally do for all these projects they've got going. And so now that that's kind of set up, they're pulling the water back out of the lake, and so we're going to get even cooler water just because of that. Which,
Yes, there is that too. Because I was asked about, what's going on with the water in terms of how they're using it. A really good example in the Yadkin chain is High Rock. They used to have the steam plant that you could see from 85.
Yep.
Well, it's a gas plant. So how is High Rock changing? Well, that water comes down from Mount Airy and up in the mountains or anything else, and the water's colder. It don't fish upriver like it used to. It's muddy, but it's muddy cold water in the summertime. It's not as hot as it used to be. It's very different.
What happened to High Rock? couple years ago when everybody was complaining? I mean, it obviously has bounced back, but
Probably a lot of different things. I mean, that lake. Remember, you don't really have a lot of control about what's coming down the river like you do here in the
there's
Wiley.
no
where you got
dam.
water
There's
coming in,
not a
water
dam,
going
yeah.
out. We got W. Keir Scott, but it's still not big enough to affect High Rock that much. So the water's only going one way. The water either flows or it doesn't flow. The way that they have changed the hydroelectric generation is really what is changing all the Yadkin lakes. The water's either on or off.
gotcha.
Used to,
Just constant little bit of flow everywhere.
yeah, you'd hear the horn go off between 10 and noon, and they'd run a little bit of flow, and they'd start ramping it up on the grid. Now, when it's time to come on, it's
Okay, on or off.
yeah.
Jody Wright asked, what causes algae to grow on the bottom after spawn on Lake James, usually in the old beds?
In the old beds.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, stuff settles out. It's going to settle at the lowest point. So if they've dug a dish out, it's going to settle in there. Plus the fact that you probably got leftover egg mass, and first one thing another, providing a food source.
For the yeah.
Algae grows on dead, organic, dying material.
Yeah.
Sewage spill from Lexington plant. I guess that was the Frank Duffy put that in there.
Yeah, they had
There
one.
was one.
Yeah, they had one.
That's
And they had one in Thomasville.
That's an
Um,
ongoing thing over here.
But when you
There's actually, believe it or not, there's still a handful of houses on Lake Wiley that have the right to pump their septic into the lake.
I have caught them, I have reported them to the state on multiple lakes across the state, and the state did not act on them. I don't know how to answer that question.
No, I mean, again, this lake was at its prime when everybody was dumping their matter into the water.
They were
and,
dumping their 10-10-10 in?
Yeah, and the and all the textile
now and the fishing stinks. Okay.
and all the textile mills were dumping their copper sulfates and their PCBs in here and everything else, and hey, they were catching 8, 9, 10 pounders.
Hey man, I just remember Road Hiss first time I ever fished it. It was as blue as it could get from some dye that had been dumped.
Yeah, it's that copper sulfate stuff.
It's really interesting, obviously, because on the professional side of what I do, and I get trying to clean the waters up and take them back more towards a pristine state, like they were before people were leaving footprints all over the land and the water and everything else. But I don't think anybody saw this effect coming. Obviously,
clean?
if we clean the water up, it's going to get better. The fishing's everything will be better. No.
No, it's really not.
It didn't happen. So.
I mean, here's the deal. Natural bank is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Laydowns are okay.
Mm-hmm.
Muddy water is A-okay. Problem is, when people with more money have the control, they get to cut all that off. So the nutrients go away, the erosion goes away, sedimentation backs up, and we have what we have now.
We've got some real challenges coming up in the next year because we've already heard from some of the lake owner associations where we've gone out and we've put habitat in, particularly native weeds and things like that. The weeds have taken off and they're doing well, and all of a sudden the homeowners are saying, yeah, we don't like them either. I made some inquiries into what kind of legal props we've got to slow them down, and
Well,
there are some, but not many. We're going to get into a situation now where we agreed to control the hydrilla if we could put native plants in, and now they want to control native plants. We're going to have to draw a line somewhere.
so here's my question, and it may not be the case, but I know with Lake Wiley, there are grandfathered property owners that still own land underneath water right now.
In
currently.
North Carolina or South Carolina?
Both.
I'm not aware of anybody in North Carolina.
Okay,
I would
maybe-
like to see it.
Maybe just in South Carolina. My in-law's neighbor happens to be one of those that is grandfathered in. He has the right to still pump his sewer into the lake if he wants to, but he does not.
Do you want to give an address?
No, I'm not going to dive into any more than that on that subject.
He's in North Carolina. He didn't care.
But with that being said, Duke has a high water mark that you can't touch, disturb, do anything to any land past that high water mark without their approval.
Right.
So if Duke gets on board with this natural habitat program,
Mm-hmm.
and the homeowners decide they don't like it and they damage it, tear it up, take it out, aren't they held responsible based off of ownership?
By law, should be.
Okay.
But I mean, we're my point the reason I brought it up is we really don't know where it's going to go. We've never had to face this before because the agreement is we'll let you control the invasives in pretty much an unlimited way, and you're going to let us put natives in. And we've spent a lot of our money, fishermen's money, grants and things like that, doing that in lakes all over the state. And all of a sudden they're coming back and saying, yeah, we don't really like that either. And sooner or later, I don't care how much they spent for that house, we're going to have a come to Jesus about the fact that it is a shared resource. And I can tell you now that I think that BASS is going to take a very hard line on it. We've talked about it.
Well, I mean, look at the economic impact
Sure.
for these counties, towns, cities, all the above, having fishermen come in and enjoy the resources that are here. Okay, you've seen it in Alabama. I'm sure you've seen the study that's been done, all the numbers from the increase in the, we'll just say, economic impact from having these big tournaments there.
Oh, yeah.
Towns that have been nothing, that have been turned into something because they've got a destination lake. Guess what? Everybody wants to go fish at Gunnersville.
Right.
Everybody wants to go fish at Chickamauga.
Sure. Agreed.
You know, at what point does the local government say, you know what, we understand you have money and that you have the ability to own lake property, but here's the line we're taking on this.
I will tell you what I have seen happen. And it's local, so we'll leave it there. But there was a time when the visitors bureaus were the people that were driving it, and they were doing great things, and they were drawing in money, they were drawing in people and everything else, and then the politics took over. If we can't attack it head on, then we'll undermine it beneath that, and that's what I've seen happen. Then I don't want to use the word infiltrate, but I can't think of anything better, and then they take away their political pull and their money, and then it goes away. But what I don't understand is what you just said. I don't care whether you like it or not. I don't care whether you fish or not. It doesn't have anything to do that. When your community is growing and there's money in it and it's circulating, it's better for everybody.
Well, okay, look at
We're not bringing crime in. I mean, it's not like
you want to see a prime example of exactly what I'm talking about? Take Santee. You've seen the rise and the fall of Santee Cooper,
Mhm.
and that at one time that was a booming town. There were golf courses, there were restaurants, there were hotels, there were places to stay, things to do. Now, if you're not staying in a campground or a cabin, you're not staying down there.
Right. And the same thing was true at Bugs Island for a lot of years. But I will tell you what I have heard from the people that are responsible for those visitors bureaus in both places directly. They've told me, I'm not making it up, I didn't read it in a pamphlet somewhere, that just kind of the overall crime rate is chipping away at that in ways that we're not seeing.
Bugs Island,
Yeah.
Mercer.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can tell you from.
I mean, like South Hill. I mean, you used to go up there and you couldn't get a hotel room on the weekend.
I can tell you some places. I can tell you the places not to stay when you go up there.
I went up there a couple of years ago to help with a youth tournament, and I mean, I've been going to Bugs for years, but I'm not part of the big tournaments and things like that. And I didn't even think anything about it. I just called up their place that I'd stayed a bunch of times before, and I pulled my boat up there, and I realized that people were watching me. I was like, "What am I doing wrong?" And then later on, one of the people that is a resident in the place that I stayed. She's a nurse supervisor for one of the local healthcare groups. Filled me in, but I was not in a place I needed to be. Didn't sleep well that night.
Yeah.
Well, but again, I mean, you would think, okay, well, that's another touchy subject given the political climate, so I won't dive down that road. But
it's still part of the overall picture. I understand. You've got to get this stuff balanced. But what you don't want to do is just throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, Look at some of the opens and things we've had down here at Norman where they had tremendous draws. I mean, the first one that I worked was the one Schleierach won. That was huge. And they got better and better and better, and you still get good draws. But I don't understand why what I personally like and don't like from somebody says that we want to do away with an economic opportunity. I don't understand that. I just don't.
Right now, they'd rather give more credence to wakeboard boats to damage the lakes than to people bringing money into the communities.
I get that they feed it year round, and that that's part of the process.
But they don't. That's the thing. They don't.
Well, I mean, if they live down here.
2 weeks, 3 weeks from now, this lake will be a ghost town on the weekends.
I noticed that it's a
Mark,
lot emptier.
mark my words. You come out here Saturday, Sunday, I'm actually getting excited. I can take my kids fishing on the weekend and be able to enjoy it.
You got a 1v1 challenge coming pretty soon.
I know.
Jody's on here.
No, it's Jason Land's
That's
supposed
right,
to
it
be.
is Jason. Jason's on here too. So what up, Hammers? He just got home.
Once I weed him out of the way, I'm gonna try to get Jody out of the way too.
Oh man, you better watch out. Them set games, they'll get you now.
Jody.
You know that as a Clemson fan.
I know.
Looking past somebody else to get to Florida State or something, and Wake Forest almost beat you.
I'd be more worried about Syracuse than anybody else. They seem to have our number. But
I'm a Gamecock fan. I worry about all of them. So.
You have to. You can't. You got no hope.
Hey, as a Gamecock fan, if they win, I'm happy. If they lose, it's like
It's status quo.
whatever.
No, but
It's always next year.
yeah, and our 2v2 looks like it's gonna go by the wayside.
Is it gonna fall off?
Well, Shane's gone, and Mike texted me last night. Said, "Well, we can do next Wednesday." Well, next Wednesday, he gets back and he leaves for
Gunnersville.
wherever, and so it's either you and me go, or
I can't go there in the middle of the week.
I pull from the hip and drag somebody else into this mess. The problem is the person that I would call, I'm not sure would be very fair.
Where's that? On Murray?
Yeah,
You gonna call Chris Marshall?
we've already talked about it.
Oh.
Chris said sign him up. He's got plenty of time to take off.
Well, call him. Hey man, you're the defender. You're the one that gets to make the rules, right?
That's the 2v2. That's a whole new thing.
Okay.
We still got a second half of a 4v4 that looks like it's going to fold up too.
Jason said Shane being gone's not a bad thing.
For him, it's not. That's a fact. Now,
Oh man.
let the weather continue to trend downward.
Hey, I'm ready.
I'm gonna tell you.
Well, I say that.
No, you're ready.
I am.
The problem is I'm not sure how much you're able
we
to
got
enjoy it.
We got a lot going on this winter.
Yeah.
If COVID regulations let basketball play indoor this year, my boat's probably gonna be sitting for a long time.
Sweet. Jody, I appreciate that, buddy. Can't wait to see what it is.
David was saying sweet because I won't be here, so he'll get a chance to win again.
Oh. Brandon, you know what, buddy? What I did to you 5 years ago, I think
a long time ago.
I know, but I still think you're not quite even yet.
Oh, I'm definitely even. I would probably wager to say I'm well past even.
Financially or numbers wise?
Either.
We might have to pull out the book on that.
Wintertime, just wintertime.
We might have to pull the book out on that. That'd be an interesting stat to
Well,
look
that's
at.
all out there. Lake Wiley Winter Trail. You can go look at every one of them.
Yeah. Well,
See you guys in the spring.
I know this. 5 years ago, if we could get another winter like that,
Hey, I had a lot of fun that winter.
it's
But
what?
it was very frustrating at the same time because I could bring 19 to 20 pounds to the scale every weekend, and
I'd have 21 to 22.
but they're only paying. They only paid two places that year, right? Two or three places.
Two or three
Because
places.
it was there are small tournaments down here because Lake Norman draws the numbers for the.
We're working on that this year. I got to get one more approval, and we might have something very, very interesting to throw out there.
So when you bring 20 pounds to the scales and have to throw them back and go home, yeah, it was fun catching them. But as a competitor, it's like, well, I just wasn't good enough today.
I understand. I understand.
I would like to say I'd understand how those guys feel when they fish St. Clair or Lake Erie or something like that, and they've got 22 pounds worth of smallmouth and they only make the cut. But I can't. I think after David gives up the belt and that's right. If you ever lose the belt, someone's probably going to call me out.
Do you know what though? I
Since
guess
I
I
don't-
had the first right to
Since-
rematch, don't I?
Yeah. Derek, still living on the glory days.
You know what, Derek? Let me have my moment. I'm sorry you didn't have yours.
Oh.
Darts don't count either,
Derek.
Derek.
Derek and I won a cat together one of those years. We just jumped in the boat.
Must not have been memorable. I don't remember.
You were there. You suppressed that one.
Probably. I was talking to Tim. It's frustrating. Okay, there was a day and time when I went out here and caught fish to try to place in a tournament. Once you do this for a certain period of time, your perspective changes, and then you go to fish strictly to win. And when you do that, it definitely changes.
Oh yeah.
You're either at the very top or you're at the very bottom.
Mm-hmm.
There's not usually any in between.
Yep.
And this weekend was rather mind-boggling to me to have the bites to potentially pull off a win, but not have enough bites to catch a limit.
Well, I can tell you the pattern that you needed to be on. So I came out here Saturday with a friend that I hadn't seen in a long time. We got out here about 11 o'clock.
Shortly after you called me?
11:30. See
Yeah.
if they were biting. And he likes to fish offshore. We went to college together. I hadn't seen him in. We hadn't fished together in probably 6 or 7 years. But we went out and caught a couple fishing. Just fishing wind-blown stuff. And then we started looking at some deeper holes, I would call them. They weren't real deep, but they were off the bank. And I finally found one where the fish were set up that I thought I could catch them on. And I knew they were bass when they were sitting on the drop. They were lined up head to tail. I mean, they were glued to the bottom, looking right in the wind. I mean,
Textbook.
it's time. It's going to happen. First cast. So, a couple casts, no bites. Don't know what's going on. Man, I know those are bass. I even went and looked at them again. Dropped live scope on them. You could see them. I mean, but they were not moving. I was throwing a big crankbait, and I literally pulled my crankbait through the middle of them, and they would not move. Wouldn't chase it, nothing. So, eventually, I caught something, and it was the biggest flathead catfish I've ever seen in my entire life. And he was sitting on the backside of the stump that they get on that spot.
Mm-hmm.
I've decorated a lot of them down there with big crankbaits.
I've got some hot lips and some DD22s down there.
And it hit it right when it came off the stump. It hit it the exact same way that a bass would hit it, but it throttled it. And so it took me about 10 minutes to land that catfish because I got on a big cranking rod, 12-pound test. Right. And I knew it was a catfish as soon as I got it, as soon as I set the hook on it. And as soon as I did that, and I was fighting that catfish, live scope, I was on spot lock. Live scope was, just scanning back and forth. All those fish that were on that drop, they moved right up on that flat and started biting.
Wow. Just needed something to trigger.
Well, either that or they were worried about getting eaten. I'm serious. There's a picture I put up on Facebook. That catfish.
Tell the truth about the
It was
size of the
literally
fish that
that
started
big.
eating.
I mean, that catfish was that wide. Like I'm holding it, and they were not big. I mean, the bass we were catching were keeper size fish, 14 inches. So obviously, it could have been a snack for a 40 to 50 pound flathead, no problem.
Oh yeah.
But it was almost like that guy was up there and he had the spot, and all those bass were out there like, nah, I'm not.
You go first. You go first. You be the first. No.
But while I was fighting that catfish, my buddy was catching him on a dang spinnerbait. I mean, it was like
You know,
Here, trade me. Will you reel this thing so I can?
you know what's funny though is you mentioned that I fished a rocky bank down the lake, way down the lake, throwing top water, and I got to the end of it and I turned and sat down in the seat, started idling off, and right as I was coming down, it's a pretty steep bank, but there's a flat spot, and I catch them there in the wintertime a lot. There's a certain lineup for the cast, so you hit the flat spot right, but I was coming over it, there's a waterfish on it, set up perfect
They wouldn't bite.
to throw a crankbait. I could not make them
You
bite.
needed to catch the catfish first. He was down there.
Evidently, I tried. Had Tim throw an old ball and chain in there. They'll bite that anytime, anywhere, usually. I could not fire those fish to save my life. And there was pretty good fish in the group, it looked like. But
Well, this place has turned into one heck of a catfishery.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things wildlife complains about is the guys moving around channel cats and things like that. And it's,
So I learned something about South Carolina, I guess it's a couple months ago from one of my striper buddies. I don't know if it's true or not, but I heard that the flathead catfish is actually an invasive catfish. Is that true?
it's
so
some waters.
here's
So is the channel
The channel is too?
and blue.
And blue.
Yeah, they don't occur everywhere the same. No,
How about that?
No.
I
that's
just
part
thought,
of the problem. I mean,
I just thought like
guys don't
catfish,
get
just
it.
like bluegill or brim, they just are there.
No, and it's interesting that you bring it up. There are still formularies and fisheries where if you've got a pond, what you put in there, definitely what you don't put in there.
10
Right.
catfish, 400 bass, 300 bluegill.
Where you're going to end up with very big catfish is about what it boils down to. But the biggest issue that I remember as a kid was that the catfish were garbage feeders, and they're not. They're feeding on the same food as the bass.
Yep.
Well,
you've got a
but
competitive
again, that's
situation.
poor training.
I
Because
always thought that.
we all thought the same. I mean, I heard the same. Oh, those are trash fish. You don't want to eat them. They eat poop off the bottom of the lake.
Right.
That's
I
not the
can't-
case.
I can tell you, my buddy Christian and I talk about this all the time. We used to fish together. He lives in Florida now, but we had. So I'm a little bit older than him, but we had the same biology teacher in high school. We went to the same high school. He was just 5 or 6 years behind me, and she told us that catfish ate algae, and I'm thinking, a bunch of catfish on crankbaits and spinner baits, and heck, I've even caught one on a buzz bait. And I'm thinking, they definitely do not eat algae. They're a predator.
Listen,
And I've had them. I've had albino channel cats in my fish tank. You feed them goldfish, and that's what they eat.
Oh, yeah.
you know,
and,
you to bring up catfish on a buzzbait.
Well, so here was the running joke. So every time it would happen when Christian and I were in the boat, and you'd catch one like a chatterbait at night or something, he'd be like, "Oh man, you must have had some algae on your hook."
No, that brings me back to my first year night fishing. Mike Allman and I fished some of the Thursday nighters together, and Thomas Richmond, of all people, God bless his soul, he was trying to help us out. We were young and dumb and had no idea what we were doing, so he told us, he said, go take a buzzbait and get on the rocks and parallel the rocks. Okay, so I did this a lot, and I remember first fish I called Thomas. Man, I finally caught one on a buzzbait parallel on the rocks. I think I get it now. Okay, cool, awesome, good work. So Mike and I entered a night tournament. We're all bowed out. We're thinking we're getting ready to have fun and beat everybody. No, not how that worked out. So we start throwing. We catch a couple bass, and we go into this little pocket, and a little deep bank it runs, and Mike throws up ahead of me. He's god awfulest commotion. He leans it, get the net. It's 8-pounder. 8-pounder. We didn't have a clue. Whatever. So I get the net. I dip down. This fish has jumped 3 times. I mean, it's acting like a big bass. Get the thing in the net. It's about a 10-pound catfish. I'm like, really? Really, dude?
I can tell you what they really like in the wintertime is the most expensive jerkbait you have in your box.
Uh-huh.
Oh, wow.
And they will tie up an Alabama rig in a hurry.
So I've ruined plenty of 9 rigs folding up in a blue cat. You go ahead, get out there in the bait, and you'll be throwing, catching bass. You're thinking, oh, good. And all of a sudden, you'll throw out there,
Dunk.
and it's
a different bite.
You know what it is when it happens, because that line will get about 7 foot of slack in it. And when you catch up to it and lean into it, he's going the other way, full steam. There's no, I mean, it's just, you better hang on.
I've got them on everything. I remember the very first one that really broke my heart was actually on High Rock, on a jig. I'd slid underneath the dock, and I set the hook on a flathead, and it was probably, I don't know, 20, 25 pounds. And it came out from underneath that dock and went underneath the boat. I thought, it's like, this is the tournament right here.
Kalijah.
Yeah, this is it. And I was with my dad. I'll never forget it. And we get it to the boat, and I'm mad, caught this catfish or whatever. And he folded up, put it in the live well, we took on and we ate it.
Showed him. There you go.
Hey, mudfish will do that to you.
I've caught those. They like top water. I've caught the biggest mudfish I've ever seen on
flipping bushes up at High Rock.
Or I'm sorry, Santee.
We fished CBC, my dad and I, and a buddy of mine gave me a little direction to go. So we run. I get in there and I'm like, man, all this looks the same. I'm just start fishing. I was the first one back. I was good. So I start fishing. Flip tree, get a bite, little fish. Flip next tree, get a big bite. Set the hook, snap my flipping stick. Get the fish to the boat, it's a mudfish.
Mm.
And then now I'm flipping
Bowfin.
bowfin, mudfish, whatever.
I'm good.
Anyway, so now I'm flipping bushes, and I don't have a flipping rod. Next best thing I had was my jig rod, which was not sufficient. I lost more fish that day than you could shake a stick at. And it was about a 50-yard stretch of trees that I'd fish down it, circle back, and they'd reload and flip.
Those things are mean, man. They got a mouthful of teeth. I forget the first one I caught. I didn't know what the heck it was.
All right, well, we're boring everybody with war stories. So,
all right, hour and 40 minutes. We didn't make it 2 hours.
It's y'all show. We go as long as you want.
You said it was too long last time.
No, I didn't say it was too long.
That was the feedback we got.
Yeah, some of the people.
I'll tell you what, why don't you drag one of your biologist buddies down here sometime?
Which one?
Surprise us.
You want to talk about plants, or do you want to talk Corey? I mean,
we can talk. We can do a whole series on this stuff.
It's going to be tough to get them down here on a weeknight, just simply because they've got to work.
I know.
We can
but
we
can Zoom.
Yeah, we can remote them in.
Just to get another perspective.
Okay, yeah. I can't see any good reason why they turn you down.
And the other thing is we can ask questions regarding Lake Norman. Okay, Corey did a meeting. He had this meeting.
Mm-hmm.
They've gotten approval for this, but
well, it's like any meeting.
There's questions.
I'm sure there's follow-up questions that, when you're learning about stuff, when you go home and sleep about it, that's when you start thinking of the real questions you should ask.
Yeah. Probably one of my most notorious professional habits. Everybody has named it for me. It's called 2 a.m. epiphanies.
Yeah.
The brain is always on.
But you know what? Let me guess. You send an email. When it hits you?
No.
Oh, you don't?
No.
See, if I get something...
Memory's way more painful than that. I just remember it the next morning and act on it.
Oh. See, if it hits me, Brandon's got random text messages from me.
Yeah.
It'll be like,
don't call me back, but what do you think about it?
yeah, and it'll be like random. Just it's right there. I got to get it up.
Well, the main reason I don't is because of the number of electronic exchanges I have over any given day. It's nothing for me to have 100 phone calls a day on top of a couple hundred emails.
Yeah.
So it's just there's so much information coming from so many different sources my way.
Yeah.
Sometimes I feel like a lawnmower man or something. It's pretty weird. So.
All right, so we will part with this. So there is going to be potentially a Rusty Hooks winter something on Lake Wiley.
Potentially.
And we're working on guaranteed money is what we're working on, right?
Big guaranteed money.
Big guaranteed money.
Big to Lake Wiley guaranteed money.
So we only got 27, 29 people left on here. But for the wintertime, guys, stay tuned.
We could potentially fish for $1,000 each week.
Okay. So David's working on that. I know some
first
of the details.
Place price, not 1,000.
Yeah.
First place and second, third place being fairly decent as well. Not
better than get your money back.
Not $1,000 to $200.
Gotcha.
Like some other.
So all I will say is I'm the spreadsheet guy behind that. So David's doing the selling for us.
Working on it.
So hopefully we'll have more information about that.
Notice our viewers just randomly
Yeah.
jumped up when somebody said something about that.
Yeah. So
And no, this is no slant on Mike Stone and the Sunday Winter Trail. This is something different for guys that don't want to fish Sunday, they want to fish on Saturday.
trying to do something for your store, right?
Well, it's not just for the store. It's for the fishermen. You know what? I hope they come in here and support me. I want to be able to support
Just
them
trying to
with
give them,
viable fishing options throughout the winter.
trying to give them options.
You know, it's not a competition. Oh, my trail's better and so on. So no, it's not that. It's
Fish
know what?
both. Fish both.
There's guys that want to fish on Saturday. They want to go to church on Sunday. I commend them for that. I got 2 kids. I need to be doing that. Brandon, you got kids. You
Sure.
We all make our choices. I'm not going to criticize anybody for their choices, but it's something a little different. And no, it won't be 3 fish for anybody that's asking. And
No Alabama rig.
I wouldn't go that far. Because that would limit the field.
Wow.
But I will allow pros to fish. For all the few pros that may tune in, you're allowed. You're welcome. Please come.
Yeah, everybody's welcome.
Anytime I can get a little pro money, it's always a good day.
All right, it's getting deep in here.
Hey, that was a directed question.
It was.
The person that will hear that will get the message.
I know. Sign us off.
All right, Rusty Hooks Live, where our hooks may be rusty, but our points are always sharp.
Got one more week to get into the big bass giveaway. Find our post. Make sure and comment. I'll have this up tonight on your YouTube and your favorite podcast player. And Frazier, thanks for coming.
Thank you guys for asking me again. I hope everybody got as much out of it as they did last time. It's William Frazier on Facebook, the guy in the clown suit in the main picture. You got questions? I've got an awful lot of people that have come to me since the last one, but I'm willing to talk to you. I'm not somebody that's unapproachable. I want people to learn. I want them to build their toolbox and be better fishermen.
Absolutely. That's what we're trying to do here, for sure.
And Jason Land, yes, cons are allowed.
Pros and cons. All right, guys. We'll see you next week.